The first time Morio felt the parasite stir, it was in the twilight behind his eyes, like a single grain of sand rolling across the optic nerve. It had slipped from a cracked market melon 2 weeks earlier and settled somewhere inside his skull, invisible, undetectable except for the gift it brought. Standing at his usual corner on Avenue Row, Morio watched a woman stride past the hat he'd left out for coins. She was going to drop a copper, he could feel it. Not from observation, but because her gesture had already unfolded 10 seconds into the future. He thanked her a heartbeat before she reached for her purse. The woman startled, then smiled uneasily and hurried away, leaving the copper, just as he'd foreseen. That was the day the realization solidified. He no longer merely guessed audiences' choices or manipulated their attention with sleight of hand. He lived in a narrow ribbon ahead of other people, where every moment arrived twice, first as a whisper, then as reality. But the second realization, one he tried to ignore, came each night when he removed his gloves and pressed a thumb into his palm. The skin no longer gave. It was stiff as fired clay, as though the parasite thanked him for his hospitality by turning him into stone. He could feel the hardness creeping, cell by cell, up his fingers. His hat was in his hand and started to tremble in his hand. His hat was in his lip. Street magicians dealt in deception for survival. They couldn't afford sentimentality. Yet Morio still flinched when he found he could snap no more. A week earlier he cracked walnuts in his bare hand for a child's delight. Now the shell merely clicked against unyielding flesh. Morio thought of surgeons, of priests, of drowning the unwelcome tenant in alcohol. Nothing slowed the advance. At last he accepted that the price of seeing the future 10 precious seconds was his own petrifaction. He told himself he would use that gift to gather more coins before the end, then retreat somewhere quiet and crumble. History, however, held sharper ambitions for him. Queen Serene was crowned 4 years earlier on a balcony of black iron, her coronation heralded by rifles instead of bells. The republic she overthrew had been flawed, but it allowed street magicians on corners and let bakers complain openly about the price of salt. Under Serene's directorate, words themselves grew costlier. A joke could fetch a whipping. A dissenting poster cost 10 years in the basalt mines beneath the city. Avenue Row had long been Morio's stage, yet now he performed with a crowd of directorate informers twitching at the perimeter, their notebooks eager for treason. Morio survived by sticking to tame card tricks and coin vanishes, never the political satire that once filled his hat with silver. He had no desire to vanish into a cell, but the parasite's vision changed the equation. 10 seconds was short, yes, but in those 10 seconds he could read lips behind him, know whether a guard meant to arrest or merely watch, know where to step to avoid patrols entirely. Soon he began performing subversive tricks again. He would palm a coin, reveal it behind a child's ear, and as he bowed, whisper, "Even iron crowns can disappear." The words were timed so the nearest informant would cough or sneeze at that instant, drowning them. Morio moved like water through the gaps the future disclosed. He felt invincible, until the morning he misjudged the parasite's progress. While shuffling cards, his right index finger refused to bend at the first knuckle. The deck tumbled, cards scattering like startled birds. Laughter from the audience stung him more than stone did. He collected the cards, noticing 2 more fingers had stiffened during the act. The parasite was accelerating. 10 seconds of foresight had spoiled him. He had gambled days of life on cheap rebellion. The gift no longer felt generous. It was a debt he must repay quickly or leave unpaid forever. That night, Morio broke into an abandoned glass house at the river's edge, seeking solitude. Moonlight dripped through cracked panes, painting fractured halos on the floor. He braced both hands on a marble work table, testing what flecks remained, and considered cutting them off before the stone reached his elbows. A future flashed. Himself, wrist stumps bleeding, fainting onto the tiles. It ended before he saw whether he lived. 10 seconds could not comfort him here. He laughed bitterly. The echo came back sounding like a stranger. 10 seconds was too small, too petty for the enormity of his fear, and yet, if properly spent, 10 seconds could detonate empires. The realization arrived as quietly as the parasite once had. He lifted his stone fingers into the moonlight. Queen Serene's directorate was a clockwork tyranny, its gears oiled by strict schedules, roll calls, salutes, synchronized parades. A man who knew the next 10 seconds absolutely could disrupt that clockwork everywhere at once, if he could be in enough places fast enough. A magician's secret weapon was misdirection. He could make the directorate chase after illusions while real rebels struck elsewhere. Morio had avoided the organized underground because he thought them reckless. Now, he needed their recklessness. It took 3 days to convince the Raven Circle to let him speak inside their catacomb HQ. They were smugglers, saboteurs, half-starved idealists, exactly the kind Serene branded vermin. They eyed Morio's stiffening hands with skepticism, but when he demonstrated by dodging a surprise bullet they shot at his foot, they listened. "I get 10 seconds, he told them. "You give me 50 men and a city map." "We have 11 men and half a map," replied their leader, a woman named Jessa who wore a miner's lamp strapped to her forehead even in daylight. "And 10 seconds is nothing." Morio clicked what movement remained of his fingers. 10 seconds is forever if you spend it just before forever arrives. For the next month they rehearsed. Morio planned synchronized strikes against the Directorate's nerve centers, the telegraph office, the water pumps feeding the Palace District, the propaganda print works, and most crucially, the switch house controlling power to the sky bridge where Serene's armored carriage crossed each Friday to inspect troops. He could not be everywhere, but his foreknowledge could flow through the Ravens. He stood alongside each team during practice, anticipating misfires, predicting when a lantern might topple or guard might return early. Every mistake was corrected before it happened. Even hardened rebels began calling him the 10-second saint. Yet, Stone spread relentless. His forearms glistened gray beneath torchlight, like marble sculpted into arms that only pretended to move. He wrapped them in bandages, telling the Ravens it was to protect from sparks. They did not press him. No one questioned a saint. 5 days before the operation, Queen Serene announced a public demonstration of her new airship cannon, a floating turret that could bombard any quarter suspected of harboring rebels. The test would coincide with her Friday inspection. Morio read panic in the Ravens' faces. "A single cannon isn't victory for her," he said. "It's theater. She wants fear." He almost admired her magician's instincts. He returned alone to the glass house. With a hammer he carried there weeks earlier, he smashed each petrified finger in turn, trying to feel anything. Splinters of gray fell like chipped porcelain. No sensation at all. The numbness was maddening. He laughed, sobbed, then forced calm. He had to finish the plan before sensation vanished entirely, before he himself became theater of another sort, a cautionary statue for pigeons. Morio spent the last night inscribing instructions into wax tablets. If he turned to stone mid-coup, the Ravens needed a final script. Writing hurt. The stone reached his shoulders, each movement grinding like mortar between bricks. But he worked until dawn, then slept 3 hours, dreaming of performing for angels who tossed coins made of clouds. Friday arrived under a ragged shawl of rain clouds. The Ravens fanned across the city in hidden pairs, detonators and signal flags tucked beneath coat flaps. Morio stationed himself on the roof of the East Clock Tower overlooking the sky bridge. From there he could glimpse the 4 key sites through a spyglass, his line of sight a nervous system linking the operation. Jessa crouched beside him, breath punching white into the chilly air. Below, the Directorate parade assembled. Soldiers in carbon-back uniforms formed ranks on the bridge. Serene's carriage, a polished obsidian box, glinted with the wet morning. Above, the airship, its belly slung with the experimental cannon, drifted like a bloated carrion bird. Morio rolled his head, loosening what muscles remained. The stone now touched his neck, voice dangerously shallow. He breathed through it. 10 seconds ahead, the parade stood perfect, unblemished. But 9 seconds ahead, the water pumps would fail, leaving hydrants to spout geysers that flooded the parade route. 8 seconds ahead, the telegraph lines would die, plunging command posts into silence. He smiled tightly. On my signal, he whispered. Lightning forked beyond the river. Thunder swallowed the sky bridge. Under that cover, Morio lifted a flare gun. He saw the flare climbing before his fingers squeezed. When it truly launched, painting the clouds crimson, chaos unfolded exactly as rehearsed. Geysers erupted, soaking soldiers. Lights across the palace district blinked out. Printing presses stalled mid-propaganda sheet, and in the telegraph office, ravens set timed charges that coughed smoke instead of fire. Deception trumping destruction. Directorate officers shouted for orders that could not travel. But the masterpiece was the switch house. Ravens there reversed polarity on the sky bridge's electric locks. When Serene's carriage rolled halfway across, the rails magnetized, freezing the wheels as though an invisible hand pinched them. The carriage stopped dead. The parade halted behind it, bottling troops. From the tower, Morio watched Serene emerge, wrapped in a cloak of blue scales that caught the storm's light. Even at distance, he saw rage contort her face. She barked to an aide. Morio saw the lips shape airship. 10 seconds later, he saw the same lips. The command had failed to transmit. A chuckle rattled in his stone throat. Saren pointed skyward. The airship descended to hover above the carriage, ready to lift her out of the mess. Morio had predicted that too. He fired a second flare, green this time, toward the airship's envelope. Ravens hidden in a wine cellar 3 streets away triggered a mortar. It was no larger than the ones used for celebratory fireworks, but they had filled it with powdered lime and shrapnel. The shell burst beside the airship's gas bag, tearing a gash that belched flaming hydrogen. The sky writhed with fire. The cannon, never fired in war, melted into slag before it could threaten the city. Crowds along the riverbank erupted in cheers and screams alike. Directorate soldiers scrambled, some to rescue, others to flee. Chain of command dissolved. It took less than 30 seconds. Jessa gripped Morio's elbow. Her eyes shone with reflected blaze. "Saint," she breathed, "we did it." Morio nodded, but the motion felt jammed. "Get to the bridge," he managed. "Seize the queen while they are blind." Jessa darted for the stairwell but paused. "Come with us." He lifted arms now fully marble. "Can't go." Understanding dawned, horror followed. She tried to speak, but he raised one finger stone stiff toward the bridge. She obeyed, disappearing down the stairs. Alone, Morio watched the parasite's last gift. 10 seconds ahead, he saw himself advance to the parapet, spread his arms over the fractured city like a statue of some forgotten guardian. 9 seconds. The thunder rumbled again, a soundless vibration in stone ear. 8. The first citizen clambered onto the skybridge railing, waving a torn directorate banner upside down, a spontaneous signal of victory. 7. Rifle cracks echoed. He could not tell whose. 6. Serene struggled against rebels who bound her wrists. 5. Someone below pointed up at the tower, at him. 4. A chant rose. "Saint! Saint!" 3. Pigeons burst from the clock face. 2. Rain returned, hissing on smoldering debris and once moved inside his body. The vision ended, and reality caught up. His knees locked, legs fused to the rooftop tiles. The stone surged into his torso, heart gripped in a granite fist. He no longer felt breath or pulse, but neither did he feel fear. The world unfolded once only now, yet it was enough. He had already seen the rest. What statue has tears? Nonetheless, something warm wet his cheek. Rain, he decided. Better to believe in rain. Below, the chant indeed materialized. "Saint! Saint!" As citizens flooded onto the bridge, surging past stunned guards to tear down barracks flags. Serene vanished beneath a sea of fists and ropes. The storm rang iron on rooftops, washing away years of silence. A boy, perhaps the child who once watched him crack walnuts, climbed the tower's stair and stepped onto the roof. He approached cautiously, eyes huge. In his hands lay Morio's own scattered playing cards, salvaged from some gutter. The child arranged them at Morio's feet, spades first, then hearts, then the joker on top. "Thank you," the boy whispered, voice breaking with wonder. He backed away, leaving Morio to overlook the city transformed, holding aloft a deck that fluttered in wind from the fires. Morio tried to smile for the boy, but stone lips held firm. The gesture perhaps emerged in his eyes instead. The child seemed satisfied. He bowed and hurried back down to the roaring streets. Night eventually swaddled the city. Fires died, replaced by lantern clusters, where ravens organized water sharing in field hospitals. Leaders argued beneath awnings, debating what government might follow tyranny. Banners were painted, slogans coined. Throughout, the stone figure on the tower remained, arms spread wide as if still orchestrating. Scholars later calculated the coup lasted 18 minutes, from first flare to Serene's capture. Official monuments credit the spontaneous uprising of the people, though vendors along Avenue Rao sell tin amulets shaped like a man standing proud with playing cards at his feet. They call him the 10-second saint. Few recall that statues are not carved only by chisels. Sometimes they carve themselves moment by moment, gift by terrible gift. Yet on certain rain-swept nights, when the river mist swirls up to kiss the clock tower's parapet, pigeons roost on marble shoulders and tilt their heads, sensing perhaps that the statue is listening still. And if lightning forks just so, for the briefest flash a shadow seems to detach, flick its wrist, and launch a flare high above the sleeping city, saluting a future only it can see. 10 elusive seconds ahead, forever out of reach, forever shaping what comes after.